Alrighty, aloha there. And we're back to the solar calendars because I think there's a few Wikipedia articles I could just grab from here so I could learn more about. I got lunar solar calendars here. And what else? What does it look like? There is just regular calendars. Some organizations, lunar, some lunar, some lunar. Okay. They're just national, all that stuff. To see also, they had a vert calendar, calendar reform, docket, calendar. Unit of time and such. Alright. Well, I already went through a solar calendar, so I might as well look at the OG article, the article that talks about calendars in general instead of calendars that revolve around the sun. Other than that, I still have the lunar solar calendar here. And what else? The Gregorian calendar, well, they accepted, yes. The main other type of calendar is a lunar. Okay. The months of the Gregorian calendar do not correspond to the cycles of the moon phase, just like the lunar calendar or the lunar solar calendar. So, you probably have that. Examples of the Julian calendar and Coptic calendars. Okay. Tropical solar calendars. Yeah, I already gone through that along with some other stuff. I'm just a bit confused when it comes to the lunar solar calendar. Does it follow mainly the moon or the sun? You have the non-solar calendars like the Islamic calendar, which is purely lunar calendar and has a year whose starts drifts through the seasons, and so is not a solar calendar. I mean, one of the big reasons is when it comes to learning the position of where you're supposed to pray. There's that. Okay. And for lunar calendars, have additional intercalation rules that roughly synchronize the solar year and the seasons. And all that comes to a head too right now. I figure I'm already good at looking at that. So, you have the regular calendar along with the Gregorian calendar and lunar solar calendar pages here. So, what should I follow? I originally wanted to follow this, the lunar, and I figure it would be better to go Gregorian. But overall, I think just talking about calendars in general is the best way. After all, you gotta learn things from the source. Yay. Okay. Calendar. A calendar is a system of organizing days. This is done by giving names to periods of time, typically days, weeks, months, and years. A date is the designation of a single and specific day within such a system. A calendar is also a physical record, often paper, of such a system. A calendar can also mean a list of planned events, such as a court calendar, or a partly or fully chronological list of documents, such as a calendar of wills. Periods and calendars, such as years and months, are usual. Okay, it's not unusual, it's just usual. Are usually, though not necessarily, synchronized with the cycle of the sun or the moon. The most common type of pre-modern calendar was the lunar solar calendar, a lunar calendar that occasionally adds one intercalary month to remain synchronized with the solar year over the long term. Okay, so prehistorically that was the case. A mixture of the lunar and the solar calendar, and just mooching it together and see what comes to be. Okay. So, yeah, you can sort of see what is the schedule for here for January, the modern day calendar, January 2023, referring to the Gregorian calendar. Now you have etymology. The term calendar is taken from Calenda, the term for the first day of the month in the Roman calendar, related to the verb galari, to call out, referring to be calling of the new moon when it was first seen. Latin calendarum meant account, book, register, as accounts were settled and debts were collected on the calends of each month. The Latin term was adopted in Old French as calendar or calenda, and from there in Middle English as calenda. By the 13th century, the spelling calendar is early modern. Alright, that's pretty much the etymology. It's just referring to dated accounts. And alright, the British calendar 1851. Gilt bronze and Mouchet height 23 centimeters, Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York City. Okay, this looks like a clock, but that's actually a physical calendar. Alrighty, history. The course of the sun and the moon are the most salient, recurring natural events useful for timekeeping. And in pre-modern societies around the world, lunation and the year were most commonly used as time units. Nevertheless, the Roman calendar contained remnants of a very ancient pre-Etruscan 10th-month solar year. The first record physical calendars depend on the development of the writing in the ancient Near East. All the Bronze Age Egyptian and the Sumerian calendars. During the Vedic period, India developed a sophisticated time-keeping methodology and calendars for Vedic rituals. According to Yuko Yashi, the Vendaga calendar in ancient India was based on astronomical studies during the Vedic period and are not derived from other cultures. A large number of calendar systems in the ancient Near East were based on the Babylonian calendar dating from the Iron Age. Among them, the calendar system of the Persian Empire, which in turn gave rise to the Zoroastrian calendar and the Hebrew calendar. Okay, so the Persian calendar actually did influence the Hebrew calendar, even when it comes to many different religions in that. And what is it? No, there's a history when it comes to many different ethnic groups in the Persian Empire that they were treated quite well, especially compared to the Babylonians when it comes to the Hebrews and all that, these other people that persecuted them. Okay. A great number of Hellenistic calendars were developed in classical Greece, and during the Hellenistic period, they gave rise to the ancient Roman calendar and to various Hindu calendars. Calendars in antiquity were lunar solar, depending on the introduction of the interscalary months to align the solar and the lunar years. This was mostly based on observation, but there may have been early attempts to model the pattern of intercalation algorithmically, as evidenced in the fragmentary 2nd century Coligny calendar. Yeah, that's actually quite. We're thinking about it when it comes to learning about before the Common Era on how they would structure calendars. The Roman calendar was reformed by Julius Caesar in 46 BC. His Julian calendar was no longer dependent on the observation of the new moon, but followed an algorithm of introducing a leap day every 4 years. They has created this association of the calendar month and the month from lunation. The Islamic calendar is based on the prohibition of intercalation, Nasi by Muhammad. An Islamic tradition dated to a sermon given on 9th Dhul al-Hajjah, age 10, Julian date 6 March 632. This resulted in an observational-based lunar calendar that shifts relative to the seasons of the solar year. Modern reforms. The first calendar reform of the early modern era resulted in the Gregorian calendar, introduced in 1582 and based on the observation of a long-term shift between the Julian calendar and the solar calendar. There have been several modern proposals for reform of the modern calendar, such as the world calendar, the international fixed calendar, the Holocene calendar, and the Hank Henry permanent calendar. Such ideas are mooted from time to time, but have failed to gain traction because of the loss of continuity and the massive upheaval that implementing them would involve, as well as their effect on cycles of religious activity. The Gregorian calendar is a long staple thing a bunch of countries follow that they figured, let's just keep it as it is. So the Holocene calendar is a year numbering years that exactly 1000 years and it's currently dominating numbering scheme. Alrighty. And the Hank and Henry permanent calendar. As proposed, is one example of a leap week calendars that maintain synchronization with the solar year by interconnecting entire weeks rather than the single days. Yeah, I see that. But let me actually look at these two and see what are the dates between this, because the Holocene. Alrighty. Currently dominate AD or BC. BC, yeah, gotcha. Before the Common Era versus BC. The terms Anno Domini and before Christ are used. Yeah. Now overview. Okay. Equipment proposals. Okay, so it was supposedly proposed in 1924, but there is some other iterations of this. That was a Hanky Henry. Okay. There's a foreign person. There's a lot more than just the actual solar calendar page. It looks like it was proposed recently. Well, in the past few decades. Yeah, in 2004, Richard Conry Henry, a professor of astronomy at Johns Hopkins University, proposed the adoption of a calendar known as the Common Civil Calendar and Time, CCC and T. Alright, so that's the proposed one. Alrighty, any pictures? Alright, these pictures. So, wait, are they part of etymology or history? Indonesian modern Gregorian calendar for the Catholic Church, pretty much right here in Indonesia, and the equinox seen from the astronomical calendar of the Bizzos Vento at Fonticelli Fontini, Sicily. Oh, so pretty much right here. Now you get systems. Okay. But systems, a full calendar system has a different calendar date for every day. Thus, the week cycle is by itself not a full calendar system. Neither is a system to name the days within a year. It's a system for identifying the years. Alright, so going through this. Following, going over here, the universal calendar, just following this massive thing. It's more like a circle. New Year's, Old New Year, Chinese New Year. It just encompasses all of it together. Calendars contain one level of cycles, week and weekday, the system, the year, and ordinate date within the year. And calendars with two levels of cycles, year, month, and day. Most systems, including the Gregorian calendar and its very similar predecessor, the Julian calendar, the Islamic calendar, and the solar Hijra calendar, and the Hebrew calendar. Actually, I'll put this. The Julian calendar, proposed by Roman. Okay, follows all this and such. I'll just keep this in the edge because I figured if I'm gonna follow the origin calendars and follow the main calendars, the Gregorian calendar people know today, and I runner up the Julian calendar, it makes sense to just follow those two. After all, those are the calendars people know of the most. But funny enough, people do talk about the World Universal Calendar. So, I might learn about calendars and all the intrigue with them. It's something I wanted to explore more. But we'll see. So, and there's a year, week, and weekday. The ISO week date system is effectively a leap week calendar system that is part of the ISO 8601 date and the time standard issued by the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, since 1988, and before that it was defined in ISO R 2015 since 1971. Okay, so apparently a World International Universal group still has some differences with other international world groups. It looks like there's just something they just can't agree on. Cycles can be synchronized with our periodic phenomena. Lunar calendars are synchronized to the motion of the moon. Solar calendars are based on the perceived seasonal changes. Synchronized on the apparent motion of the sun, such as an example is the Persian calendar. And lunar solar calendars are based on a combination of both solar and lunar reckonings. Examples include the traditional calendar of the China and Hindu calendar in India and Nepal, and the Hebrew calendar. Okay, so the Hebrew calendar is the lunar solar. The week cycle is an example of one that is not synchronized to any external phenomenon, although it may have been derived from lunar phases, beginning anew every month. Okay, very commonly, a calendar includes more than one type of calendar or has both cyclic and non-cyclic elements. Okay, yeah, all the complexity and all that stuff. Back to the universal calendar. Pretty much see under the red, you have the stuff at day and how everything is just synchronized. And all these dates here. So the story during the 1950s, its summation was made in the United Nations by India, voicing the need of a single standard column recommending for international use. Okay, there's a lot that's even put down in this universal calendar. A so-called universal calendar combining different calendars. So this is a mash of every single calendars when it comes to religious points of views and all that stuff, following something that everybody can follow. Which I do know, living in America, when it comes to many people with different backgrounds enjoying the holidays and dates because of particular things they do. Yeah, it doesn't seem too off to follow a world calendar. It could actually be quite interesting and to follow other people's practices by just following the date and when holiday it is and all that such. Or you could just be advertised as hell with like when is Chinese New Year's or when is Jewish New Year's. Okay. And you have the sun and the moon. Shindo's Nuremberg Chronicle 1493. This looks depressing. The fact that it was made around the time when the New World was actually discovered, then it looks not bad. It's not Middle Age art. Middle Age art looks downright creepy. Okay. Solar calendars assign a date to each solar day. A day may consist of a period between sunrise and sunset, with the following period of night, or it may have been a period between successful events such as two sunsets. The length of the interval between two such successive events may be allowed to vary slightly during the year, or may be averaged into a mean solar day. Other types of calendars may also use a solar day. Lunar. Lunar. Not all calendars use the solar year as a unit. A lunar calendar is one in which days are numbered with each lunar phase cycle, because the length of the lunar month is not is not an even fraction of the length of the tropical year. A purely lunar calendar quickly drifts against the seasons, which do not vary much near the equator. It does, however, stay constant with respect to other phenomena. Notable tides, an example is the Islamic calendar, Alexander Marshak, in a controversial reading, believe that marks on a bone patron 25,000 BCE represent a lunar calendar. Other mark bones may also represent lunar calendars. Similar to Michael Rapin-Gluck believes that marks on a 15,000-year-old cave painting represented a lunar calendar. Hmm. Okay, that's actually quite wacky when you think about how they have to wrestle all this. But now I'm starting to understand when it comes to this world calendar or universe calendar, trying to follow something just to have it concise is so. That is the trouble with lunar compared to solar. But lunar solar, oh, it has a whole bag of worms. Lunar solar, a lunar solar calendar is a lunar calendar that compensates by adding an extra month as needed to realign the months within the seasons. Prime examples of lunar solar calendars are Hindu calendar and Buddhist calendars that are popular in South Asia and the Southeast Asia. Another example? Oh. Another example is the Hebrew calendar, which uses a 19th cycle. Okay. Now you have subdivisions. Alrighty. I don't think I could just skim through this. It's needed. Kind of like early 20th century Pepetrol calendar. Looking through this, yeah. Hmm. So nearly all calendar systems group consecutive days into months and also into years. Okay. Cycle of the month phase be grouped into other periods. There's a week. Number of days in the tropical year is not a whole number. A solar calendar must have a different number of days in different years. This is generally known as the intercalation. Even if the calendar is solar but not lunar, the year cannot be divided entirely into months that never vary in length. Cultures may define other units of time, such as the week, for the purpose of scheduling regular activities that do not easily coincide with months or years. Many cultures use different baselines for their calendars starting years. Historically, several countries have based their calendars in regional years. A calendar based on the reign of their current sovereign. For example, the year 2006 in Japan is year 18 Heisei, with Heisei being the era name of the Emperor Akito. Hmm. So I take it this, yeah, Emperor Akito is a recent person. Yeah, from the reign from January 1989 into his application in 2019. So an example would be when it comes to the year 26 used to be Heisei when he was emperor. So it's the year of the emperor, similar to, let's say, North Korea when it comes to the year of King Kim Il Sung, who was the founder, or really just the ruler of North Korea as its first leader when it was its own sovereign country. Which I think also Saddam Hussein in Iraq had that. Because I heard something weird related to that, just because he had a bit of a deity complex. It's oddly not similar to North Korea, but when it comes to this, the establishment of Islam, Sunni Islam type they have over there. So yeah, it's quite strange thinking about that. But you have other types. Astronomical and astronomical. Man, I can't pronounce things right now. Okay. And the Jewish calendar compared to the Islamic calendar. The advantage of such a calendar is that it is perfectly and perfectionally accurate. The disadvantage is that the working out when a particular date would occur is different. Okay. Yeah. The advantage of such a calendar is the ease of calculating when a particular date occurs. The disadvantage is imperfect accuracy. Furthermore, even if the calendar is very accurate, its accuracy diminishes slowly over time. Yeah, changes in the Earth's rotation, limits when it comes to. Yeah, the rules would need to be modified from observations made since the invention of the calendar. There's a revision, a patch update on all of this. The example would be the calendar of the Koala 5591. So, you have this calendar, and you have this. Complete and incomplete. Calendars may be either complete or incomplete. Complete calendars provide a way of naming each consecutive day, while incomplete calendars do not. The early Roman calendar, which has no way of designating the days of the winter months other than to lump them together as winter, is an example of an incomplete calendar, while the Gregorian calendar is an example of a complete calendar. Yeah, it's the understanding that I got when it comes to people using the Gregorian calendar because of it not being that inaccurate compared to a bunch of other calendars that people do follow. But it could have been better. We could have the society that didn't follow it and followed other calendars to abide in our modern day accurate world that encompasses so many other people in the world. So usage. As you can see, all these blue, purple, violet is all Gregorian. So for dark green, Japanese, I think it's just referring to calendars. You have the Hebrew here. So the Hebrew calendars is pretty much in these parts. Indian national calendar, Persian solar Hijri. So not just modern day Iran, but also Afghanistan followed the Persian calendar. Ethiopian Hebrew, yeah. Nepalese. So there's this red one. Okay, Indian national calendar. So it's an orange and a mix of a red Hebrew, or is that a green, like a light green? I'm not quite sure. Jelly. Okay, so when it comes to some people living in Taiwan, and the Thai solar calendars pretty much living here and Yajashi. No, I don't follow any Julian calendar or such, but it seems when it comes to the state of Iran, Ethiopia, India, Japan, and Thailand, they do. North Korea, yeah, North Korea has dark. The Jushi. Okay, so that's what the piss gold yellow is. So, yeah, current usage of civil calendars in the world. Some countries use an additional calendar not listed here to determine holidays and other traditions. For example, the Chinese and Islamic calendars. Same when it comes to Japan, where they also follow the Gregorian calendar. But it seems like when it comes to the off practices, they just follow the Japanese calendars. It's like the weird thing when it comes to Korea, how they have, or they used to have 3 age brackets they had to follow. Because what is it now? They sort of reverted that to standardize 2 of the ages to 1. So what is it? Your Korean age and your international age, along with your calendar age. There is some confusing things in some places in the world, just like calendars. But at the very least, I know what or why it's a thing. But further ado, it's time. heading out. And further ado, aloha.